Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler, and I am the host and the founder of the Order of Man podcast and movement. Welcome here. Welcome back. I'm glad you're tuning in. We need more men in this fight to reclaim and restore masculinity. That's exactly what we're doing here via this podcast and interviewing incredible men and sharing insights and ideas with you. And of course, banding together as a community of men who want to thrive and succeed as fathers and husbands and business owners and community leaders. And it seems like much of the world is against what it means to be a man. And that is what we stand against and what we stand for: genuine masculinity in a society that's increasingly dismissive of it. So I've got a good one for you lined up today. We're talking about tending your field, what that means, and more importantly than just what it means, specific strategies, ways, tips that you can incorporate and implement into your own life for tending your field. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Before we get into that, I want to make a mention of something I'm very excited about. We just launched last week the new Order of Man 12-week battle planner. Now, you guys are used to this written version because I've been talking about it for, 5 years at this point. But we just came out with the digital version. So if you go to 12, the number 12, 12weekbattleplanner.com, 12weekbattleplanner.com, the number 12, you're going to be able to take a look at that app on both Apple and Android devices. So again, 12 is in the number 12 week battle planner. You're going to be able to check that out. There's a free version. There's an upgraded version. And if you're a member of the Iron Council, then that is included. The free annual subscription to that is included in your membership. So go check it out, 12-week battle planner. It is basically this in a digitized format, in an app format, and a little bit on steroids as well. It's got some cool new features that are going to help you manage not only your quarterly plans, but also your day-to-day activities and non-negotiables and tasks and things like that. So go check it out, 12weekbattleplanner.com. All right, guys, let's talk about tending your field. You know, it's amazing to me. We're so inundated with information, whether it's via even this own podcast or social media posts. We're inundated constantly with other people's problems, other people's ideas and concepts and what's outraging them and what they're upset about and what their missions and what their goals are. And it's good. You know, I think we need to do a better job curating our own feeds and content based on what is relevant and pertinent to us. But we become inundated and consumed with what other people are doing at the expense of tending to our own field. And we neglect and overlook our families, our own business, our bodies, our health, our bank accounts, because we're so worried about what this person is doing or what they're not doing or what books they're selling or what shoes they're talking about and what we're supposed to be outraged about and what the news cycle is telling us. And all of that comes at the expense of you focusing on yourself. Now, that said, I get it. Look, I understand we can't just be so consumed with ourselves that we aren't aware of what is going on around us. But there's a line, and we all know that there's a line. And many of us, including myself, cross that line from time to time and forget to take care of what is actually important, the things within my control. So when I talk about tending your field and my field, what I'm specifically referring to is taking care of your family dynamics, spending time with your wife, engaging with your kids, taking care of your fitness, worrying about your business, growing your business or your career or your employment, activities, hobbies, interests, health, bank account, everything that is going to help you get what you want. Worry about that first. Take care of that first. And as I was walking around in the field with my family yesterday, I got thinking about this because the snow here in Maine is starting to melt. The field is about 85% uncovered at this point from the snow. The grass is greening. The water's running through the little creek, and it was nice to be able to walk around outside. And as my wife and I were walking and the kids were playing on the trampoline just last night, we walked by the food plot that my oldest son and I worked on last year. We started it, in fact. And what was cool about it is that we spent most of the fall and winter watching the deer come in and enjoy the food plot that we had put together and spent a lot of time on. We did a lot of work with trail cameras this year as well. So we got to pull those cards out and, see the pictures of the deer and the fox and the raccoons and all kinds of animals that were coming through and enjoying what we had done and what we had put together. which was the point, right? To bring the animals in so that we could hunt those animals and provide food for the family. But what's interesting is it didn't happen overnight. The place that we built this food plot was it was either an orchard or some sort of crop that previous owners of this property had made. But when we first moved here, which was almost 2 years ago now, that was completely overgrown. The weeds were as tall as I am. You could barely get through there. There was one little path. There was rocks everywhere. The ground was bumpy and uneven. It was unworkable in the stage that it was in. Now there was potential and there was promise. And so my son and I went out there and we plowed it, pulled all the big rocks. We went and tilled it. We seeded it multiple times. We planted different plants and vegetation in there to bring the animals in. We did a lot of research on what kind of mixture, seed mixture and food mixture we need to actually plant. Then we set up the trail cameras and we moved those around, and we spent a lot of time out there, and it actually yielded and produced the results that we wanted. And this presented itself as an analogy for life for me. You know, how often do we have these things that we want in life? We have these desires and goals and ambitions. Let's take your marriage, for example. You guys who are married or have a desire to be married at some point, want your wife and your relationship to be just perfect. You want the intimacy and you want the sex and you want the deep connection and you want the meaning and the purpose and the satisfaction. And yet you aren't really willing to put forth the amount of effort that's required. You just hope that you can snap your fingers and experience those results. Some of you guys that have 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds on you have spent 2 decades potentially building this layer of fat that is consuming you. And you think just because you want to be healthier that you can just snap your fingers or take a shot or a pill or something that's going to help you lose that weight that you've been building up over the past 2 decades. You want the promotions, you want the business, you want the podcast to climb to the #1 charts without putting forth the effort. I mean, isn't this a great explanation of society? Is that we all want the results without the effort? It would be nice. It just isn't possible. And so you need to tend your field. So what I want to do right now is share with you 4 tips as I was thinking about this analogy and walking around with my wife last night and looking at the field that my son and I had put together and why we had so much success with it. And I wrote down just a few tips here, 5 tips that are going to help you tend your field more effectively. But before I get started, what I will say is I want you to begin to identify what your field is. What field you need to tend. Is it the fatherhood field? Is it the entrepreneurship field? Is it the health field, the finance field? What field are you? Who knows? Maybe it's even your office space or your car that you need to make sure you get in order before you start worrying about what everybody else is doing and how if only other people did what you wanted them to, then your life would be different. Start with you. All right, here we go. Number 1, create a workable space. Create a workable space. And it has to be goal-oriented. You have to have a goal. You have to have a desire. There has to be something that you actually want, because if you don't know what you want, you don't know how you're going to set up your field. So for example, my son and I wanted a food plot that would draw in the deer. Now, we actually happened to plant some vegetation that attracted turkeys, but it didn't attract the deer as well as the turkey. Okay, well, we learned. And although it was successful in bringing in quite a bit of turkeys, it wasn't as successful as bringing in the deer. That was a problem, but we got to create this workable space based on what we want. So we had to go in and we had to clear out all the vegetation. We had to plow it. We had to pull these big rocks. They were probably, I would say, anywhere from 50 to 150, maybe slightly more pounds. We had to pull all those rocks out of the field, get them out of there. We had to then till it. That was then a workable space. Same thing with your office space. If your office space is cluttered and it's chaos and there's trash everywhere, or your car has old, food wrappers and garbage and filth everywhere, that's not a workable environment. If in your marriage, there's a lot of baggage and contention and animosity and frustration, that's not a workable environment. So that's a little disheartening. It's a little frustrating, but know that as soon as you begin to work on it, you're going to start clearing the path. Excuse me. clearing the path so that you can create the results that you're after. So how are you going to clear the path? Again, I'm going back to whatever your goal is, whatever field you need to tend. What is it? And then what is it that you need to do to clear the path and make it something that's going to be conducive to the results that you desire? Number two, along the same lines, you've got to remove the weeds. All right. The weeds are going to come in. You're going to get distracted. There's going to be temptations. There's going to be people. There's going to be toxicity. There's going to be stuff that comes up. Stephen Pressfield, who I've had on the podcast now twice, talks about this in the form of the resistance. There's going to be resistance. And you need to be aware of that. Because if you think everything's going to be roses and fairy tales and sunshine on your path to improve your relationship or your business or whatever it may be, you're setting yourself up for failure, because it's not going to be like that. It's going to be long and arduous and painful. There's going to be struggles and ups and downs and highs and lows. And if you aren't aware of the fact that it's going to be challenging at times, then at the first sign of hardship, you're going to throw in the towel because you weren't expecting it. And you're going to assume that you're doing it wrong because you're bumping up against what, again, Stephen Pressfield calls the resistance. It's there. And it doesn't go away, by the way. I thought that with this podcast, that once I got to a certain point, that it would just be easy, right? Things would glide and go along smoothly, and nothing would come up, and everybody I ever reached out to would join me on the podcast. That's what I believed. I'm finding that not to be the case. This resistance continues to pop up, just like the weeds in the field do. And the weeds will strangle whatever your goal is, whatever your desire is, whatever your ambitions are. So you need to constantly be weeding your field. You need to get rid of the temptations. You need to get rid of the distractions. There might be people that you need to cut out of your life altogether that are bringing you down and adding toxicity and negativity to your space in your field. You need to get rid of it. Ruthlessly get rid of it. And I'm not saying you have to be a jerk or an a-hole to anybody, but you got to protect your field. And there's people that are going to represent, and activities that are going to represent a conflicting frame of reference, a conflicting point with what it is you're trying to accomplish. Identify it. Be realistic about it so that you can address it the way that needs to be addressed. All right, number three, continual maintenance, ongoing maintenance. When we planted that first seed, it didn't take as well as I would have liked. There was some mixtures in there that I didn't really think were going to do a good job. And so we continued to do research, and then we continued to plant, and we went out there and we weeded, and we went out there and made sure it was getting the water that it needed. Continual maintenance. This is not a one and done type thing. If you clean up your office space, or you create a workable space for your marriage or your business or your client interactions and relationships or your finances or your fitness, it isn't like once you create it, it's done. You can wipe your hands and never deal with it again. Guys, you have to build in systems. Systems need to be put in place so that you will do this however often you need to do to address it. There's things that I do with the podcast every single day. There's things that I do with my business every single day. When it comes to, for example, the merchandise that we have, there's a set time we order new merchandise. There's a set time that we actually ship out merchandise. There's a set time that my son and I do customer interaction. We have that all identified. We have that all laid out. We have systems for maintenance and ongoing management of the field. It isn't a one and done type thing. You don't get to say, hey, I lost 20 pounds and I'm under 15% body fat, so I can check that off the list and now I can go do whatever it is I want. No, it has to be continually maintained. And this is what men do. They're mature enough to recognize that things are going to continue to pop up. Weeds are going to continue to present themselves. Temptations are going to continue to come up, and they implement systems. They create and implement systems that allow them to manage those things when they come up. Because I'll tell you what, it's a whole lot easier to deal with the weeds early and often than it is to wait for a year or even 6 months to deal with it. Those weeds get out of control. They get unruly. They spread. They get worse. So if you deal with it ongoing, you're not going to have to deal with the headaches of not dealing with it when things are harder to deal with. All right. Number 4. Okay. You've got to prune. You got to prune your trees. You got to prune your life. How is this different than weeding? Well, weeding is getting rid of the things that are obviously not conducive to what you want to do. But pruning is different. When I lived in Utah, we had a big peach orchard next to us, and occasionally we would go prune the peaches. And essentially what you're doing is you're cutting off branches, you're picking fruit that looks good. It's not a weed, it's actually fruit. It's the fruit of it's the harvest. So you're actually picking that off and sacrificing that, because if you don't do that, then you're going to not yield the best possible crop that you can, because all of the resources are being dispersed and divvied up to so many different things, in this case, fruit, that you have a bunch of average fruit. But if you pick and prune and pluck, then you're going to have fewer fruit, but it's going to be better. It's going to be the best, and it's going to be a better crop because you do that. So weeding is getting rid of the obvious. Pruning is getting rid of the things that are good so that you can clear room for the great. We've all heard it. Good is the enemy of great. And that is so true. I found that to be so true in my life. And yet a lot of us will hang on to the good because we see it. We're like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I feel like I'm doing it. Or even worse, we slip into complacency and we think, like, this is good enough, because it's scary to prune, right? It's scary to pluck something off the vine or off the tree that is actually the fruit that you're after, with a little faith and hope that if you do, then something better will come along. That's scary. That represents a risk. And yet pruning is crucial. It's crucial to ensure that the tree and the harvest are as good as they possibly can get. So don't settle. Don't be complacent. Don't fall back into ruts. Continue to prune. Get rid of the good. Explore the good. Even question the good. I do that with this podcast, and the podcast is doing good. But I'll look at it and I'll say to myself, okay, well, what can we do better? How can we improve this? What do I need to get rid of? What do I need to change? What do I need to tweak? And all of us will say, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't think that's true. I think we should be running through experiments and trying different things and testing different strategies to see if we can make it that much better. Because here's the cool thing. If it doesn't work, you can always revert, right? If you implement that new business strategy and you think, hey, we're going to get rid of the good, we're going to move on to the great, and it doesn't work or produce the great, then all right, go back to the default and try something new. But man, we can't be complacent. We can't believe that what got us to the point we are right now is going to get us to the point that we want to go. We got to prune the good to get to the great. And then the last point that I wanted to make here is that at some point you get to harvest. And this is the ultimate goal, right? You get to harvest. You built that relationship. You built that business. The paycheck is coming. The notoriety is coming. The sense of accomplishment and pride and fulfillment is coming. And that feels good. And you get to harvest. And there is a harvesting time, right? There is a point where you should be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. The deer are coming into the food plot. The turkey are coming into the food plot. We get to go and we get to harvest one of those animals. The fruit is on the tree or on the vine, and we get to harvest that. And we get to break bread and eat that fruit together. We get to enjoy what we created, what we worked so hard for. But here's the danger. I said harvest. I didn't say destroy. See, a lot of the times what we'll do in our lives is that we'll harvest the fruit, we'll reap the benefit, but we'll do it without thinking about when the next crop is going to come along. So we'll destroy it, right? So if we're using our same analogy about the trees, for example, the fruit trees, you're going to pick the fruit off, but you're not going to cut down the tree, right? You're not going to just think that, oh, this is over. This is all it was. No, what you're going to do is you're going to pick the fruit, but you're going to keep managing the trees so that next year it's easier than it was this year. And you make yourself even more capable of what you want to accomplish moving forward year after year after year after year. So don't think that just because you're in harvest right now that you get to destroy or let the weeds come in and destroy everything that you've worked so hard to create. Harvest is temporary. Excuse me. Along with the spring coming, I've got a little bit of allergies, probably what you're hearing. But along with the harvest, you have to realize that this is a temporary state. You know, if you're making the paycheck or you've got the body or you've got the relationship and you're connecting with your kids, you're growing your business, you're just knocking out of the park, that's temporary. That's the harvest will be consumed at some point. You will eat everything. And what are you going to do then? Well, if you didn't think about how to continually maintain what it is you're trying to create, you're going to run into some problems. I dealt with this in my financial planning practice. I called it the accordion effect. And so what would happen is I would spend all of this time doing the 4 steps that I was telling you: creating workable space, removing the weeds, continual maintenance, pruning the good to get to the great, and then I would harvest. So what I was doing in my financial planning practice is I was calling clients, networking, asking for referrals, and I'd have a flood of new business come in. And then I would harvest it, right? I'd close the deals, I'd close the accounts, I'd get assets under management. I would grow the business. And all the while I was harvesting, I was forgetting to continue to do the other 4 things I'm telling you to do. So I wasn't going out and getting the clients. I wasn't marketing. I wasn't asking for referrals. And so once I harvested all the income that was generated through my own hard efforts, I burned through it all. You know, you burn through the money, you burn through the results. And then I realized, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I didn't do any of this other stuff in the meantime. And so now here I am on rush mode, trying to like get all this business back in because I wasn't doing it on an ongoing basis. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to the harvest. Just because you're harvesting doesn't mean you get to sit your fat ass on the couch and be lazy and complacent and satisfied with what you've created. If you do that, you're not in this incredible cycle, this incredible process that I'm telling you. It's like you're like grinding through, and then every time you harvest, you have to start over, and you know what it's like to start over with nothing. So when we harvest, we're not going to destroy, or we're not going to allow what we created to get destroyed. We're going to continue to be good stewards, to be prudent with our field, so that we can continue this process, not only for the benefit of ourselves, but the benefit of those who are around us. You know, when I think about the field, my whole family's benefited. Our neighbors are benefited. People in our lives are benefited. People have shared meat with me from their harvest and hunting. And so I'm benefited by their work. What an amazing thing. What an amazing opportunity. But it only comes if you're able to tend your field correctly. And if you miss any one of these steps, it's not going to work. Or if it does work, it's not going to work as effectively as it could. So think about that. Chew on that. Ponder on that this weekend. Specifically, I want you to think about what field you need to tend. And then think about the analogy of the food plot or the apple orchard or peach orchard that I'm sharing with you, and think about how that applies to your life and how you could apply it to your life. Let me recap, and then we'll call it a day. Number 1, create a workable space. And it has to be goal-oriented. If you're setting up an environment, but you don't know what it's for, how well is that going to work? So for example, somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I need you to set up a sports complex right here. I just need you to set up a field right here. And you think that person's talking about baseball, you're going to create a baseball diamond. What if they come back to you and say, no, I needed a football field? Well, I mean, technically you created a field, you made it work, but it's not for the goal. Like it's not usable at that point. So create a workable space based on what your goals are. Number 2, remove the weeds and the debris. You got to get rid of the rocks. You got to get rid of the weeds. You got to get those things out of there. They're going to cause problems. There are temptations. There are distractions. There's people. There's contention. There's animosity. And I get it. Sometimes it's easier to say, you know what, I'm just going to leave that there. Yeah, that one little weed, nah, it's not going to mess with anything. I'll leave it alone because we don't want to deal with it. Or, oh yeah, that one rock in the middle, we'll just work around that. No, get it all out of there. Clear it completely out of the way so that you have a great workable environment. Number 3, continual and ongoing maintenance. It's not enough to do it once. You got to do it forever, and you've got to create the systems to do it. Number 4, prune. Get rid of the good, prune the good, sacrifice the good, which is hard. I get it's risky, but sacrifice the good to get to the great. If your relationship is okay, that's not great. If your business is, average, that isn't great. What can you do to make it great? And what good ideas and what good results do you need to sacrifice so that you can get to the great? And number 5, harvest, but don't destroy. Harvest, but don't destroy. Enjoy the fruits of your labor, but don't allow that field to get overrun again, or don't destroy it. Don't chop down the tree just because you yielded the fruit for the year. How can you make this a habitual, ongoing process that's more efficient, better, more profitable, more lucrative as you continue to go? This is how we tend our field, guys. This is how we do it. Whether it's your family, your kids, your friends, your colleagues, your business, your faith, your finances, your bank account, your body, your whatever. This is how you tend your field. Let's stop focusing so much on what everybody else is doing. Oh, if Ryan only did this. Oh, if you did this. Oh, Ryan, you should do that. You should do this. Great. I can appreciate the feedback, but also maybe we all ought to spend a little bit more time on what we're doing and how we're improving our station and the station of the lives of the people who are around us, who we care about, and who we have an obligation for. All right, guys, take this weekend. Think about how you're going to tend your field, because we got a lot of work to do this year and every year. But let's make it work so that we look back at the end of the year and we get to harvest what we've done. And then we can roll into 2022 next year, of course, with the same excitement and opportunity, potential, and hope for what we created this year. All right, guys, that's it. We'll be back next week. Sorry, my cough interrupted my timing on that, but I'm glad it did, because I didn't want to mention the battle planner again. Go to 12, the number 12-week battle planner, and you can check out the new digital app. All right, guys, get out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.